Chapter 1. The Awakening. The world does not slow down to wait for the hesitant. It does not whisper permission to those who doubt. It moves, relentlessly, unapologetically, like a river carving canyons through stone. And in its current, countless souls drift aimlessly, swept by tides they never chose. But every so often, one awakens. One stands against the pole, eyes wide open to the truth. Greatness is not given, it is forged. You were not born merely to exist. You were born to shape, to sculpt reality with your will, to write your name into the chapters of time like ink on parchment that refuses to fade. The question is not whether you are capable. The question is whether you will wake up to that power before the clock runs out. Every morning, the world resets. A silent battlefield stretches before you, not of swords and shields, but of choices and chances. On this battlefield, your greatest enemy is not others. It is the quiet voice within that says, later. The whisper of comfort disguised as logic. The seduction of mediocrity cloaked in routine. And yet, beneath that noise, there is another voice, fainter, but fiercer. The one that says, rise. This chapter is not about tactics. It is not about hacks, shortcuts, or overnight miracles. It is about awakening, the moment the soul cracks open and truth floods in like light through shattered glass. It is the same spark that ignited in Lincoln when he rose from failure after failure to hold a fractured nation together. The same flame that burned in Edison's workshop at midnight, surrounded by broken bulbs, when the world thought the darkness would win. It is what pulled Carnegie from poverty to empire, Ford from obscurity to revolution, Disney from bankruptcy to wonder. None of them were handed destiny. They seized it with trembling, determined hands. Understand this. Your life is not random. It is raw material. And like marble in the hands of Michelangelo, it waits for you to carve out the masterpiece within. But you cannot sculpt with closed eyes. You must see, truly see, the weight of each moment. Because the seconds you let slip are not coming back. The days you spend asleep to your potential will not be refunded. Time is the most unforgiving creditor, and it demands full payment. In every age, there comes a generation that decides to wake up, to reject the soft lullaby of the ordinary and stand in the storm. They build empires in the ruins where others saw impossibility. They bend the arc of history with the pressure of relentless vision. And in doing so, they prove a truth older than civilization itself. The human spirit, once awakened, is unstoppable. But awakening is not a gentle process. It is violent. It shakes the foundations of who you thought you were. It questions every excuse you've ever built, every justification you've ever whispered to yourself in the dark. It tears away comfort like a surgeon removing dead tissue, leaving only the raw, beating core of what matters. Some run from this moment, terrified. Others face it, and are reborn. Think of the child who looks at the stars and whispers, one day. That whisper is the seed of greatness. But for most, the world buries that seed under layers of fear, doubt, and distraction. Society teaches us to trade our wild ambitions for predictable comforts, to shrink until we fit the mold. But inside you, that seed still exists, waiting for the day you decide to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. This is that day. The first rule of becoming the best at anything is not talent. It is not resources. It is not luck. It is awareness, the unflinching recognition that you are both the architect and the inhabitant of your life. You are the sculptor and the stone. You are the fire and the forge. The moment you accept this, you awaken the power that has always been yours. Power to change. Power to build. Power to transcend. When the samurai rose at dawn, they did not question the sun. They honored it. They sharpened their swords not out of obligation, but out of reverence for the coming day. Every sunrise was a call to battle, and their battle was with themselves. In the same way, every day you wake is a summons, not to exist, but to conquer the invisible war within. To sharpen your mind, align your spirit, and march toward the horizon with unshakable intent. And here is the truth that many avoid. No one can awaken for you. Not your mentors, not your family, not the world. Awakening is an act of personal revolution. It is standing in front of the mirror and refusing to look away. It is staring into your own eyes until every layer of pretense burns off and what remains is the raw, unfiltered will to rise. The reason Edison tried thousands of times was not because he loved failure, but because he was awake. He saw what others couldn't, the light in the darkness, the possibility where others saw absurdity. Lincoln endured defeat after defeat because he was awake to a destiny greater than his ego. Carnegie didn't wait for permission. He built his empire from nothing because he was awake to opportunity hidden in adversity. Ford wasn't content with building carriages. He awakened to a vision that changed the way the world moved. Disney stared bankruptcy in the face and kept drawing because he was awake to a kingdom that existed only in his mind, until he made the world see it too. Their stories are not distant fairy tales. They are mirrors, reflections of what happens when a human being decides to wake up fully. And when you awaken, truly awaken, something shifts. The complaints grow quieter. The distractions lose their grip. The excuses dissolve like mist under the morning sun. You begin to see patterns where others see chaos. You start to hear the rhythm beneath the noise. The world doesn't get easier, it gets clearer. And clarity is the first weapon of the awakened. So ask yourself, have you been living or merely existing? Have you been shaping your days or letting them shape you? Have you been awake or sleepwalking through borrowed dreams? This moment, right now, is the threshold. Step over it and everything changes, not because the world bends to your will instantly, but because you bend to the truth of who you are meant to become. Close your eyes for a second and picture this. Centuries from now, a child opens a book and reads your name. Not as a footnote, but as a chapter. A story of someone who rose from the ordinary and dared to reach for the extraordinary. Someone who faced the storms and built a lighthouse. Someone who awakened and refused to go back to sleep. That story begins here. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when the world approves. This is the awakening. The first rule. The ignition point of every journey to mastery, greatness, and legacy. Awaken, and the world changes. Chapter 2. Mindset. The mind is the throne upon which every empire is built or destroyed. It is the silent architect behind every action, the unseen general commanding the armies of habit, belief, and decision. Long before a single invention lights up the world, before a single monument touches the sky, before a single revolution reshapes the destiny of nations, it is born in the mind of a human being who refuses to think small. Every transformation, whether personal or historical, begins with a shift in mindset, a subtle yet seismic decision to no longer view the world through the lens of limitation but through the clear, unfiltered eyes of possibility. History is littered with the bones of those who had resources but lacked vision, while it is crowned by those who possessed nothing but the power of an unbreakable mindset. When Thomas Edison stood surrounded by failed prototypes, he did not curse the darkness. He trained his mind to see every failure not as an ending but as data, as feedback, as another step toward illumination. When Henry Ford was told that ordinary people would never own automobiles, his mindset did not bend to the cynicism of the age. Instead, it carved a new mental blueprint that declared, "I will make the impossible inevitable." Andrew Carnegie's steel empire was not born in the soil of privilege but in the furnace of a mind that refused to accept poverty as permanent. Walt Disney, mocked and dismissed by bankers who said his ideas were childish fantasies, held a mindset so deeply rooted in vision that no rejection could shake it. Abraham Lincoln endured defeat after defeat, personal tragedy, and relentless opposition, but he carried a mindset forged in resilience and moral clarity that eventually stitched a divided nation back together. Mindset is not simply thinking positively. It is the discipline of thought, the architecture of perspective, the deliberate cultivation of mental terrain where fear has no permanent residence. It is the difference between those who are crushed by failure and those who use failure as a foundation stone. The human brain is a battlefield, and every day, belief and doubt clash in a silent war that determines the trajectory of your destiny. If doubt wins, your potential collapses long before the world ever gets to see it. If belief wins, even the smallest steps forward accumulate into unstoppable momentum. The greatest trap is not external resistance but internal limitation. Most people do not fail because the world rejects them. They fail because they reject themselves before they begin. They allow the mind to become a prison, locking away ambition behind bars of, "I can't," "I'm not ready," "it's too late," or "it's too hard." But those who change history are the ones who reprogram that inner dialogue, who take control of the language inside their own skulls, who understand that mindset is not fixed, it is molded, sharpened, and strengthened through relentless awareness and practice. Just as steel is tempered in fire, the mind is strengthened through deliberate friction, reading when others scroll mindlessly, learning when others complain, persisting when others surrender, choosing clarity when chaos surrounds. Imagine for a moment the mindset of the Wright brothers. They were bicycle mechanics with limited formal education, facing ridicule from intellectual elites who insisted that human flight was a fantasy. Yet their minds were calibrated not to follow public opinion but to explore the edges of the possible. Their belief was not blind arrogance. It was structured thought, disciplined experimentation, and a refusal to allow doubt to dictate their future. Or consider Steve Jobs, decades later, standing in a garage with a vision that most would have dismissed as a dreamer's illusion. He did not merely build computers. He cultivated a mindset that fused technology and art, utility and beauty, into a cultural force that reshaped industries. A powerful mindset is not about pretending everything is easy. It is about deciding, in the depths of uncertainty, that no matter how difficult the path becomes, your thoughts will remain aligned with your highest vision, not your current circumstance. The mind is like fertile soil. If you plant weeds of doubt and neglect them, they will take over and choke any potential growth. But if you plant seeds of discipline, belief, and clarity, and nurture them daily with learning, action, and reflection, the harvest will eventually come, not overnight, but inevitably. Mindset is a choice. Not a one-time choice, but a continual, relentless series of choices made in the privacy of your inner world. It is the decision to interpret setbacks not as personal indictments but as opportunities for recalibration. It is the refusal to let the noise of mediocrity drown out the whisper of your deeper potential. It is looking at your current limitations and saying, "This is not the boundary, this is the beginning." Look closely at any master in any field, from athletes to inventors, artists to entrepreneurs, and you will find that before skill was built, before strategy was perfected, before results were visible, their mindset had already shifted. Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team, could have surrendered to humiliation. Instead, he forged a mindset that turned rejection into fuel, discipline into obsession, and competition into personal evolution. Nikola Tesla lived in poverty for much of his life, yet his mind roamed the edges of reality, envisioning technology that would shape centuries. Oprah Winfrey faced abuse, rejection, and societal barriers, but her mindset transformed every wound into wisdom and every setback into leverage. The world will mirror the state of your mind. If your thoughts are scattered, your results will be chaotic. If your beliefs are weak, your actions will hesitate. If your mindset is fixed on scarcity, you will find scarcity even in abundance. But if your mindset is expansive, strategic, disciplined, and anchored in purpose, then even the smallest opportunity can be transformed into a foundation for greatness. This is why two people can face the same obstacle and produce radically different outcomes. One sees a wall, the other sees a challenge to be climbed. One sees a dead end, the other sees a chance to build a new road. Developing this kind of mindset is not glamorous work. It does not happen through motivational slogans or temporary enthusiasm. It happens in the unseen hours, when you challenge your own thoughts, when you deliberately step outside your comfort zone, when you hold yourself to a higher standard even when no one is watching. It is forged in silence, tested in difficulty, and revealed in moments of decision. And the more you build it, the more unshakable it becomes. There will always be noise. The world will always offer opinions, distractions, doubts, and fears. But mindset acts as a filter, allowing only what aligns with your purpose to pass through. It is your mental immune system. Just as a healthy body fights off infections, a strong mindset resists negativity, excuses, and mediocrity. It doesn't mean you never feel doubt or fear, it means you have trained your mind not to be governed by them. Chapter 3. Belief. Before any empire rises, before any invention changes the course of human history, before any legend is carved into the collective memory of civilization, there is always a single, invisible spark, belief. Not a casual, surface-level hope. Not a weak, conditional kind of faith that collapses at the first sign of resistance. I'm talking about the kind of belief that burns in silence long before the world notices. The kind that is tested in storms and refined in solitude. The kind that holds the line when logic whispers, "Give up," and fear says, "It's over." Belief is not simply optimism. It is conviction turned into a living force. It is the invisible architecture behind every great act of creation. Think of the early days of humanity. Before maps, before technology, explorers set sail into unknown waters. They didn't have GPS, satellites, or guarantees of safety. They had belief. Belief that there was something beyond the horizon worth finding. Belief that their courage would outweigh the risks. Belief that their vision was real even when no evidence existed. This same force runs like a golden thread through the lives of history's most transformative individuals. Thomas Edison believed in the light long before a single bulb illuminated the night. He faced ridicule, financial strain, and over 1,000 failed experiments, but belief never left his side. Henry Ford believed in a future where automobiles were not a luxury but a standard. When investors withdrew and critics mocked his ambition, belief became his currency. Andrew Carnegie believed that a poor boy from Scotland could build one of the greatest industrial empires of his era, not because the world told him it was possible, but because he told himself it was inevitable. Walt Disney believed in magic when all he had were sketches and dreams. When his first studio collapsed, when he was told that no one would care about a mouse, belief became his anchor. Belief is the quiet architect of destiny. It does not scream, it builds. It does not seek applause, it lays foundations. When Abraham Lincoln stood before a divided nation, surrounded by doubt and hostility, he did not draw his strength from external validation. He drew it from an inner well of belief that the Union could endure. Belief gives you strength when evidence is scarce. It allows you to act before you can prove. It pushes you to keep walking even when the path disappears beneath your feet. It is the one thing that cannot be outsourced, delegated, or borrowed. Others can encourage you, teach you, or inspire you, but they cannot believe for you. The truth is, most people never truly believe. They flirt with their dreams the way one flirts with distant stars, admiring them from afar, talking about them with fascination, but never reaching for them with both hands. They believe when it's easy, when the crowd nods in agreement, when success seems inevitable. But the moment the first crack appears, the moment doubt whispers louder than applause, their belief wavers, and with it, their destiny collapses. The people who rise above the noise are those who choose to believe especially when no one else does. They carry their vision through ridicule, setbacks, and long winters of silence. Belief is not about ignoring reality, it is about rewriting it. It's the mental signature that stamps possibility onto blank pages. It's the difference between Edison seeing broken filaments and seeing light, between Ford seeing a carriage and seeing an industry, between Disney seeing bankruptcy and seeing castles. It is belief that turns raw imagination into tangible reality. And the fascinating thing is that belief does not just shape your thoughts. It shapes the world's response to you. People sense conviction. They feel it in your tone, your actions, your persistence. Belief radiates energy, and energy moves people, opens doors, attracts allies, and bends circumstances. There is a reason why throughout history, leaders, visionaries, and revolutionaries have often been labeled crazy before they were called genius. Their belief outran the understanding of their era. Galileo believed in a universe that revolved around the sun when the world threatened him for it. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in a world that judged character over color when segregation was law. Rosa Parks believed that her dignity was non-negotiable when the system demanded she give up her seat. Every single transformative shift in society began with one individual whose belief was stronger than the fear that surrounded them. But belief is not a passive emotion. It is an active discipline. You have to build it, feed it, protect it. Every doubt that enters your mind is like a crack in the foundation. You can't ignore it, you must reinforce it. Belief grows through repeated acts of commitment. It grows when you follow through on promises to yourself, when you keep showing up, when you collect evidence through action. The more you act in alignment with your vision, the stronger your belief becomes. It's like lifting mental weights. Every repetition, every step, every small victory compounds. The danger is subtle. Disbelief often doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in through sarcasm, through procrastination, through the quiet voice that says, "Maybe I'm not meant for this." It disguises itself as logic, as practicality, as caution. But beneath that mask is fear. And if you let that fear dictate your internal story, your actions will follow, and your potential will rot in silence. Belief is the counterforce. It is standing in the middle of doubt and saying, "I choose to believe anyway." Think of the Wright brothers again. Do you think belief wasn't tested when their early prototypes crashed into the sand? When newspapers mocked their ambition? When no one funded their work? And yet, belief was the one tool they never lost. It was the invisible engine that lifted wood and fabric into the sky. The same goes for Elon Musk in modern times. When rockets exploded, when critics lined up to predict his failure, when bankruptcy loomed, belief kept the vision alive long enough for reality to catch up. Belief precedes evidence. Boys, if you wait for proof before you believe, you will wait forever. The greatest irony is that evidence is born from belief-fueled action. A musician doesn't wait for applause before playing. An inventor doesn't wait for headlines before experimenting. A leader doesn't wait for agreement before leading. They believe first, they act second, and only then does the world eventually see what they saw all along. Belief is also contagious. When you truly believe, others feel it. They are drawn to it like moths to flame. Think of how Steve Jobs presented his vision. It wasn't simply logic. It was belief so strong that it pulled people into its gravity field. When Lincoln spoke, his belief in unity made weary hearts rise again. When Martin Luther King Jr. declared his dream, his belief awakened a sleeping nation. Your belief has the power to awaken others, but only if it burns bright enough within you first. There will be times when belief feels fragile, when setbacks hit harder than expected, when the silence stretches longer than you imagined. In those moments, your belief is being tested not for destruction but for strengthening. Steel is not tempered in comfort but in heat. Likewise, belief is solidified not in victory but in uncertainty. Every failure you survive while still believing is a layer added to your foundation. Every obstacle you face without surrendering your belief is proof to yourself that your vision is not conditional. You must learn to protect your belief like a precious flame. Surround it with people who feed it, not those who smother it. Guard your mind against cynicism, because cynicism is belief's slow killer. Be ruthless about what you allow into your mental space. Feed your belief with knowledge, with action, with reflection. Remind yourself daily why you started, what you see, what you are building. This is not blind faith. This is deliberate, strategic cultivation of conviction. Because in the end, belief is not just something you have, it is something you become. It shapes your identity. You stop being someone who tries and start being someone who is. You stop saying, "I hope," and start saying, "I will." The moment belief takes root at that level, doubt loses its leverage. Obstacles become temporary. Failure becomes feedback. Time becomes an ally. The world may not catch up immediately, but it will. Belief is the third rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the heartbeat of every action, the light in every dark tunnel, the force that turns invisible dreams into visible legacies. Without it, strategies crumble, motivation fades, and vision dies quietly. With it, even the smallest human being can alter the course of history. Believe first. Evidence will follow. Chapter 4. Clarity. Clarity is the blade that cuts through the fog of indecision, distraction, and noise. It is the quiet force that separates those who drift through life from those who carve their names into history. Without clarity, the mind becomes a crowded room where every voice shouts at once, ambitions collide, priorities blur, and days slip away like sand through open fingers. But with clarity, every action sharpens, every choice aligns, and even the most overwhelming mountain begins to reveal a path up its side. History has shown again and again that the people who shape eras are not those who had the most resources, luck, or support. They are the ones who saw the clearest picture of what they wanted to create. Think of Thomas Edison walking into his laboratory. He didn't experiment blindly. He had a clear vision of illuminating the world, and every failed filament was simply a step toward that vision. Henry Ford didn't just dream about cars. He had a precise, unshakable idea, an affordable automobile for the average American. Walt Disney didn't vaguely want to do something creative. He pictured entire worlds, characters, castles, and experiences down to the smallest detail before a single brick was laid. Abraham Lincoln's clarity about preserving the Union gave him the strength to endure a war that would have broken lesser men. Clarity gave each of these figures the ability to endure resistance without losing direction. In a world filled with infinite distractions, screens glowing, notifications pinging, trends shifting by the hour, clarity has become rarer than ever. Most people live in a state of mental fog, pulled in 10 directions at once, chasing goals that aren't even their own, reacting instead of creating. They confuse movement with progress, busyness with impact. They wake up and run, but they don't know where they're running to. Their energy leaks through 1,000 cracks because they never took the time to define the target. Clarity is what stops the leak. It channels the flood into a focused river powerful enough to move mountains. Clarity begins with questions most people avoid. What do I truly want? Not what others expect. Not what society praises. Not what looks good on paper. What do I want to build, create, become? These questions are uncomfortable because they strip away illusions. They reveal the gap between the life you live and the life you desire. But it is precisely in this discomfort that clarity is forged. Carnegie didn't stumble into steel. He identified with precision the industry he would dominate and structured his entire existence around it. The Wright brothers didn't vaguely hope to innovate transportation. They were crystal clear that they would put man in the air. Clarity doesn't leave room for maybe. It demands this. Once clarity is established, decisions become easier. Not painless, not effortless, but easier. When you know exactly where you're going, you stop entertaining distractions disguised as opportunities. You stop wasting time on battles that don't matter. Clarity acts like a compass. Even when storms hit, you don't lose your sense of direction. This is why so many people start strong and fade quickly. They had enthusiasm but no clarity. Motivation without clarity is like a powerful engine with no steering wheel. It roars loudly but goes nowhere. Consider the example of Steve Jobs. His clarity about Apple's purpose, to fuse technology and elegance into tools that change lives, allowed him to make ruthless decisions. He cut entire product lines, dismissed good ideas that didn't fit the vision, and refused to dilute the brand. That clarity was both a sword and a shield. It cut away distraction and defended against compromise. Or look at Lincoln again. His clarity about preserving the Union didn't just guide his strategy. It sustained his spirit through endless criticism, bloodshed, and personal loss. Without that clarity, his leadership would have fractured under pressure. Clarity also simplifies complexity. Great visions often seem overwhelming because they are tangled in uncertainty. But once you clarify the what, the how starts to emerge. Ford didn't know every mechanical solution when he envisioned mass production, but his clarity about the outcome allowed him to reverse engineer the process. Edison didn't know exactly which material would work for the filament, but his clarity about the end goal made the search methodical instead of chaotic. Clarity turns chaos into a sequence. Another dimension of clarity is self-clarity, knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what kind of life you refuse to compromise on. Without self-clarity, external voices dictate your path. You bend to trends, opinions, and fears. You live reactively, adjusting to the world's shifting expectations instead of leading your own. The giants of history were not confused about their identity. They were flawed, human, imperfect, but they knew what they stood for. That internal clarity radiated outward, shaping their actions and attracting those who resonated with it. Modern society rewards distraction. It thrives on keeping people in a fog because confused minds are easier to sell to, easier to control, easier to occupy. Clarity is an act of rebellion. To sit down in silence, away from the noise, and define your vision with ruthless honesty is to reclaim your sovereignty. It's to say, I will not drift. Most people avoid this work because it's uncomfortable to face themselves without filters. But every legend, every innovator, every revolutionary has walked through that discomfort. They asked themselves hard questions, defined their targets, and then built their lives around those answers. Clarity also demands consistency. It's not something you define once and forget. It's something you revisit, refine, and reinforce. Life will test your clarity. New temptations will arise. Doubts will creep in. Opportunities will appear that are attractive but misaligned. In these moments, clarity protects you from dilution. It keeps your focus sharp. Think of a sculptor with a chisel. Every strike is guided by the clear image of the statue in their mind. Without that mental image, they would just be hitting stone randomly. With it, each strike has purpose. Look at Elon Musk in recent decades. Whether one admires or critiques him, it's undeniable that his clarity regarding multiplanetary civilization and sustainable energy has allowed him to focus his energy in ways few can. He endures criticism, regulatory challenges, and colossal setbacks because the clarity of the vision outweighs the noise of the present. When SpaceX rockets exploded, when Tesla was near bankruptcy, clarity kept the mission alive long enough for reality to catch up. Clarity is also humbling. It strips away illusions and reveals the distance between where you are and where you want to be. It doesn't flatter you, it directs you. And that direction can be uncomfortable because it demands accountability. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. Vague goals require no courage. Clear goals demand it. Without clarity, belief has nothing to anchor to. Discipline has nowhere to aim. Action scatters like arrows shot into the night. Gratitude loses focus. Adaptability drifts. Resilience weakens. Learning becomes random. Clarity is the foundation upon which every other rule of greatness is built. It's the map before the journey, the blueprint before the skyscraper, the mission statement before the empire. Chapter 5, Vision. Vision is the force that bends reality before reality even knows it's being shaped. It is the invisible blueprint drawn in the mind long before the world sees a single line. Where clarity gives direction, vision gives magnitude. Clarity tells you where to go, vision shows you what the destination can become. Without vision, even the most disciplined individual can build efficiently in the wrong direction. But with vision, even the smallest, most uncertain steps are transformed into pieces of something far greater. Look at the lives of those who reshaped history, not merely participated in it, but redesigned its trajectory. Thomas Edison didn't just want to invent something useful. His vision was to illuminate the darkness itself, to bring light into every home, to change the rhythm of human life. Henry Ford didn't simply want to manufacture vehicles. His vision was to democratize transportation, to reshape cities, economies, and the pace of civilization. Andrew Carnegie's vision was not merely to profit. It was to build an empire of steel that would lay the literal foundation for a modern nation. Walt Disney's vision was not just to entertain. It was to build worlds, to construct dreams that people could physically step into. Abraham Lincoln's vision was not just to win a war. It was to preserve the Union and redefine the moral soul of a nation. Vision takes what is invisible and treats it as inevitable. It requires the audacity to see beyond the current moment, to treat obstacles as temporary, and to project your mind far into a future that others might call unrealistic. The Wright brothers stood on windy fields staring at fragile wood and fabric, but in their minds, they saw the sky conquered. Steve Jobs stared at circuit boards and code, but in his vision, he saw art and technology fused into elegant simplicity. Elon Musk stood in factories that many thought would crumble, but his vision stretched to Mars. Vision is the ability to see what others don't and hold that image with such intensity that the world begins to reorganize around it. But vision is not fantasy. Vision without structure collapses into daydreaming. The difference between a visionary and a dreamer is execution. Visionaries hold their image of the future so vividly that their daily actions align with it. They use vision as both a map and a fuel source. They wake up not merely to work, but to bring something into existence that didn't exist the day before. Every setback becomes a calculation, every delay a lesson, every obstacle part of the architecture. Vision acts as gravitational pull. The stronger it is, the more it pulls talent, resources, opportunities, and energy into its orbit. Consider Abraham Lincoln once more. In the darkest days of the Civil War, when blood soaked the fields and the nation fractured under its own weight, his vision of a preserved Union kept him steady. He wasn't reacting day by day. He was holding a picture of what America could be on the other side of the storm. That vision guided his decisions, tempered his emotions, and gave him endurance where others would have broken. The danger in modern times is that vision is often confused with vague ambition. Many people say they have a vision, but what they really have is a wish. A true vision is specific enough to inspire action and vast enough to outlive temporary discomfort. It's not just, I want to be successful. It's what success looks like, why it matters, and who you must become to achieve it. Carnegie saw skyscrapers rising where others saw mud and steel. Ford saw highways where others saw dirt roads. Disney saw castles and kingdoms where others saw swampland in Florida. Vision allows you to look at empty land and see cities, to look at a blank canvas and see masterpieces, to look at a broken system and see transformation. Vision also separates leaders from followers. Followers look at what is. Leaders look at what could be. Followers wait for conditions to be right. Visionaries create the conditions. Visionaries are often misunderstood because their sight extends beyond the average person's horizon. When they speak, they sound audacious, sometimes even delusional. But history has always favored the audacious. When Edison described lighting entire cities, people laughed. When the Wright brothers spoke of flight, people dismissed them. When Jobs spoke of putting 1,000 songs in your pocket, critics called it marketing hype. Visionaries don't debate with limitations, they outbuild them. Another critical truth: vision requires solitude. It is born not in the noise of trends but in the silence of thought. The greatest visions were conceived away from applause, in workshops, libraries, fields, or quiet rooms. They emerged from individuals willing to detach from the world long enough to see beyond it. In a time where distraction is the default state, carving out mental space to think, imagine, and project is a rare and powerful skill. Vision demands you step away from the crowd to build something worth leading them toward. But holding a vision is not easy. The world will test it. Reality will push against it with every kind of resistance: financial, emotional, societal. There will be moments when the gap between your vision and your reality feels unbearable. This is where most give up. They confuse temporary resistance with permanent impossibility. But those who endure understand that vision is not supposed to match reality immediately. It is supposed to pull reality forward. Every legendary figure endured a season when their vision was nothing more than sketches, prototypes, speeches, or late-night notes. What separated them from the rest was their willingness to hold the vision with unwavering conviction through that season. Vision also demands alignment. You cannot hold a grand vision and live with small habits. You cannot see a vast future and act like you're merely surviving. Your routines, your learning, your environment, your associations, everything must slowly bend to match the shape of your vision. This alignment doesn't happen overnight. It happens through thousands of conscious decisions, through shaping your inner world to reflect the outer world you are building. Ford didn't build the assembly line in a day. Disney didn't build theme parks overnight. Vision is both a horizon and a daily discipline. And then there is the legacy of vision. True vision outlives its creator. The skyscrapers Carnegie imagined still define skylines. The light bulbs Edison perfected still push back the night. The affordable car Ford built reshaped the structure of societies. The fantasy worlds Disney sketched are visited by millions decades after his death. Lincoln's vision of unity still echoes in the ideals of a nation. This is the mark of real vision. It doesn't end with you. It transcends. Vision is the fifth rule of becoming the best at anything because it provides the why that fuels the how. It gives meaning to discipline, structure to belief, and direction to action. It makes you dangerous in the best way, because when you hold a vision that is stronger than the obstacles, the world eventually bends. Chapter 6. Purpose. Purpose is the anchor that holds everything together when the storm hits. It is the reason behind the vision, the engine beneath the discipline, the hidden fire that turns a temporary ambition into a lifelong mission. Without purpose, even the most brilliant strategies eventually lose their force, because effort without meaning decays. With purpose, even the smallest actions become charged with power. Look at the individuals who left indelible marks on history. Their achievements were not random accidents. They were extensions of a deep, almost immovable sense of why. Thomas Edison was driven by more than the idea of invention for its own sake. He wanted to transform human life by bringing light to the darkness. Henry Ford's purpose went far beyond making cars. He sought to redefine mobility itself, to change how ordinary people lived and worked. Andrew Carnegie was motivated not merely by profit but by the idea that industry could elevate society. Abraham Lincoln's purpose was not simply to govern, it was to preserve the moral and structural fabric of a nation. Walt Disney's purpose wasn't entertainment alone, it was to create spaces where imagination could become tangible. Purpose gives endurance a spine. When setbacks come, and they always come, a clear sense of purpose prevents collapse. It's what keeps you building when results are slow. It's what turns sacrifice from something bitter into something meaningful. Think of Lincoln again. Through loss, failure, and relentless opposition, his sense of purpose remained steady. Or think of the Wright brothers. Their purpose of proving that human flight was possible gave them the strength to keep pushing despite financial limits and public ridicule. Without purpose, their vision would have died in the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk. Purpose also filters decisions. When you understand why you are doing something, the fog of distraction begins to clear. Opportunities that don't align with that purpose lose their shine. Temptations become easier to resist because you're not chasing everything, you're moving in one direction with precision. This is why some people seem immune to trends or criticism. They are not easily swayed because their internal compass is fixed. Modern culture often encourages people to chase outcomes, money, status, recognition, without first anchoring to purpose. But those external outcomes are unstable. They fluctuate, and when they fade, so does motivation. Purpose, on the other hand, is internal. It doesn't depend on applause or immediate success. It fuels itself. That's why purpose-driven individuals can withstand seasons of obscurity that break others. Edison endured thousands of failed experiments because the work itself had meaning. Disney kept sketching after bankruptcy because the dream itself was worth more than temporary comfort. Finding purpose is not about waiting for a lightning bolt. It's about introspection, honest reflection, and paying attention to what stirs you on a deeper level. Purpose is discovered in silence, in asking yourself, what would I fight for even if no one was watching? What problem would I dedicate my life to solving even if no one gave me credit? What vision would I hold even if the world called it impossible? These questions are uncomfortable because they strip away superficial motives and leave you face to face with what actually matters. And once purpose is found, everything else begins to align. Belief strengthens because it's anchored. Clarity sharpens because there's a target worth aiming at. Vision expands because it's tied to something bigger than ego. Discipline becomes less of a grind and more of a natural expression of commitment. Action stops being scattered and becomes deliberate. Purpose is the gravitational center of all of it. History remembers those who acted with purpose not because they were flawless, but because their why was stronger than their setbacks. When you operate from purpose, you become resilient in a way that tactics alone can't provide. You can adapt to changing circumstances without losing your core. You can endure long seasons of hard work without visible reward. And when success comes, it is deeper, more sustainable, and more impactful. Purpose is the sixth rule of becoming the best at anything because it's the foundation upon which all lasting achievement is built. Without it, ambition burns out. With it, ambition becomes destiny. Chapter 7. Discipline. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. It is the quiet, consistent force that turns sparks into flames and dreams into structures you can touch. Where vision inspires and belief ignites, discipline sustains. It is the element that separates those who briefly touch greatness from those who live in it. Talent may open the door, but discipline walks through it, day after day, when the excitement fades and the work becomes routine. Every historical figure who built something that lasted understood this, whether they spoke of it or not. Thomas Edison didn't stumble on breakthroughs in moments of convenient inspiration. He worked through endless nights, methodically testing, documenting, refining. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize industry through sporadic bursts of energy. He imposed systems, schedules, and standards that demanded daily precision. Andrew Carnegie scaled his empire through disciplined expansion and strategic reinvestment. Abraham Lincoln honed his ability to speak, lead, and strategize through relentless study and deliberate practice. Walt Disney drew, revised, and built through years of structured effort before the world ever saw a castle rise. Discipline is not glamorous. It rarely feels cinematic in the moment. It looks like early mornings, late nights, repeated drills, uncomfortable decisions, and quiet sacrifices no one applauds. It's the writer sitting alone, revising a paragraph for the 10th time. It's the athlete running laps long after the stands are empty. It's the entrepreneur refining a product again and again while competitors sleep. Discipline lives in the invisible hours when no one is watching. And it is precisely those hours that shape the visible legacy. The danger many fall into is waiting to feel like it. Motivation is fleeting, discipline is deliberate. The greatest builders of history didn't rely on fleeting emotions to determine their actions. They set standards, routines, and commitments that operated regardless of how they felt. Edison's laboratory didn't shut down because he was tired. Ford's factories didn't pause because he lacked inspiration. Lincoln didn't stop leading because the weight was heavy. Discipline allowed them to act consistently in the face of fatigue, doubt, or temporary setbacks. Discipline also creates momentum. Each small, consistent action compounds, like drops of water carving stone. At first, the results are invisible. Then, slowly, patterns emerge, strength builds, structures rise. People often underestimate how much can be built in a decade of disciplined effort and overestimate what can be achieved in a week of intensity. History rewards those who understand the long game. Vision gives them the target, discipline gives them the endurance. Think of Michael Jordan's story. His extraordinary skill was built on relentless practice, arriving at the gym before anyone else, staying long after they left, repeating shots thousands of times until his body moved with precision under pressure. Or think of Beethoven, losing his hearing yet continuing to compose through sheer disciplined mastery of his craft. These stories aren't just about genius, they're about the discipline that sustains genius. Discipline also protects you from the chaos of distraction. In a world designed to fracture your attention, discipline acts as a shield. It creates boundaries around your time, focus, and energy. It turns maybe into, this is what I do. It turns scattered ambition into structured progression. Without discipline, even the clearest vision evaporates in the noise of daily life. With it, even a modest vision can be built into something extraordinary. Another truth about discipline: it is uncomfortable by design. Growth lives on the other side of resistance. Discipline is not meant to feel easy, it's meant to build capacity. Like muscles under weight, your will strengthens through repeated acts of disciplined choice. Every time you show up when it would be easier not to, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. Over time, that identity becomes unshakable. Discipline is also deeply personal. There is no universal schedule that works for everyone. There is only the structure you commit to and defend. Lincoln's discipline looked different from Ford's. Edison's routine was not Disney's. What united them was not identical methods but an unwavering commitment to stay the course. When discipline becomes part of who you are, you stop negotiating with yourself every day. You stop wasting mental energy deciding whether to act, you simply act. And in that consistency, extraordinary progress accumulates almost quietly. Years later, people call it genius or luck. What they don't see is the disciplined foundation beneath it all. Discipline is the seventh rule of becoming the best at anything because it transforms fleeting potential into enduring achievement. It's the rhythm that keeps the song alive long after the first note fades. Chapter 8. Action. Action is where everything you've imagined, believed, clarified, envisioned, and disciplined yourself toward collides with reality. It is the turning point between intention and manifestation, the place where the internal world meets the external. You can possess the greatest vision in history, believe with the strength of a mountain, and cultivate discipline like a warrior, but if you don't move, nothing happens. Action is the language the universe responds to. It doesn't react to wishes, it reacts to movement. History's great figures understood this instinctively. Thomas Edison's lab was not a shrine to ideas, it was a machine of relentless experimentation. He didn't wait for the perfect concept. He worked through thousands of prototypes, each one an act of movement. Henry Ford didn't just theorize about assembly lines. He built them, tested them, refined them. Andrew Carnegie expanded aggressively, moving steel and strategy like a chess master in constant play. Abraham Lincoln didn't lead through speeches alone. He signed orders, made military decisions, engaged in political maneuvering every single day. Walt Disney didn't just sketch dreams. He bought land, built structures, hired people, and kept building even when banks doubted him. Their ideas mattered, but their actions made history. Action has a way of cutting through fear. You can think yourself into paralysis. You can analyze, plan, and hesitate until the moment passes. But once you start moving, clarity increases, momentum builds, and fear loses its grip. Think of the Wright brothers again. They didn't wait until they had perfect blueprints. They built prototypes, crashed them, learned, adjusted, and took flight. Or think of modern innovators like Elon Musk. His companies were born not out of perfect certainty but out of bold action into uncharted industries. Action also reveals truth. Plans are theories, action is reality. Many people stay stuck in the planning phase because planning feels safe. It gives the illusion of progress without the risk of failure. But every plan eventually collides with the unpredictable texture of reality. Action shows you where you're wrong, where you're right, where to adjust. Edison learned more from one failed experiment than from months of speculation. Ford discovered improvements by moving production forward, not by endless theorizing. Action is both teacher and catalyst. But action must be consistent, not just dramatic. One grand effort followed by weeks of hesitation is not the foundation of greatness. The people we remember didn't act once. They acted relentlessly. Daily. Relentlessly. Lincoln didn't preserve a nation through one decisive moment. He acted through thousands of difficult choices. Disney didn't build his empire in a single project. He kept taking action through failure after failure. Momentum is born in repetition. There's also a dangerous myth that action must wait for inspiration. That is backwards. Inspiration often follows action, not the other way around. When you start, you awaken creative energy. When you hesitate, that energy sleeps. Discipline gives you the framework, action gives you movement. A writer waiting for the perfect sentence may wait forever, but the one who writes finds the rhythm as they go. An inventor waiting for flawless ideas will be overtaken by the one who builds. Another truth, action exposes you to criticism. The moment you step forward, someone will have an opinion. This is inevitable. Those who change history are not those who avoid criticism but those who act despite it. Lincoln was criticized constantly, Ford was mocked, Edison was called foolish, Disney was labeled impractical. They acted anyway. Visionaries understand that inaction to avoid judgment is still a decision to hand your future to others' opinions. Action is also what attracts allies and opportunities. People rally around movement. Investors, collaborators, supporters, they are drawn not to abstract dreams but to tangible progress. When Ford began producing cars, others wanted to be part of that momentum. When Disney started building, talent flocked to him. The world doesn't respond to intention sitting idle, it responds to visible momentum. Finally, action creates identity. Every time you take decisive steps, you reinforce to yourself that you are someone who builds, who moves, who makes things happen. Over time, hesitation fades not because the world becomes easier but because your identity becomes stronger. Action breeds confidence, not the other way around. Action is the 8th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the gateway through which all potential must pass. Nothing happens until you move. Once you do, everything begins to align. Slowly at first, then faster as momentum builds. The world changes not for those who wait, but for those who act. Chapter 9, Gratitude. Gratitude is the force that keeps ambition from curdling into bitterness, and success from collapsing under the weight of ego. It is not weakness, it is perspective. It is the lens through which every hardship, every victory, every setback, and every opportunity is understood in its proper scale. In the pursuit of greatness, gratitude does not slow you down. It stabilizes you. It roots you so deeply that when storms come, you don't topple, you grow stronger. Look closely at the lives of the builders of history, and you will see gratitude woven into their stories like steel beams hidden inside towering structures. Thomas Edison, despite countless failures, often expressed appreciation for the lessons embedded in each setback. He didn't curse the experiments that didn't work, he valued them as steps forward. Henry Ford, in his writings, acknowledged not only his successes but also the adversities that shaped his methods. Andrew Carnegie's philanthropy in his later years reflected a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunities that allowed a poor immigrant to build an empire. Abraham Lincoln, even in moments of personal agony, expressed thankfulness for the resilience of people who believed in a fractured nation's potential. Walt Disney, after financial collapses and betrayals, still spoke with gratitude about the people who stuck with him, the chance to create, the wonder of imagination itself. Gratitude changes how you interpret struggle. Without it, every obstacle feels like an injustice. With it, every obstacle becomes an instructor. Gratitude doesn't pretend the journey is easy, it simply reframes it. When you're grateful for the opportunity to build, to try, to rise, then failure doesn't break you, it teaches you. Lincoln's gratitude for the ideal of the Union made him endure pain that would have crushed another leader. Edison's gratitude for the process made him view every failed attempt as data, not defeat. This is not sentimentality. This is strategic resilience. Gratitude also acts as a shield against entitlement. The higher you rise, the easier it is to forget the foundations beneath your feet. Success without gratitude breeds arrogance. Arrogance blinds, isolates, and ultimately destroys. Carnegie, Ford, Disney, each of them, at critical points, looked backward to acknowledge the circumstances and people that allowed them to build. Gratitude didn't make them smaller, it made their legacy deeper. Modern culture often mistakes gratitude for passivity. It's not. Genuine gratitude is fierce. It allows you to appreciate what you have while still striving for more. It's the balance between contentment and ambition. Without gratitude, ambition turns into a desperate chase, always unsatisfied, always hollow. With gratitude, ambition becomes grounded, powerful, but not desperate. Gratitude also binds people together. Teams, communities, nations, they respond to leaders who express sincere appreciation. Lincoln's ability to thank his soldiers, Edison's acknowledgement of his collaborators, Disney's public appreciation of his animators and builders, these moments weren't cosmetic. They built trust. Gratitude creates loyalty. It reminds people that they are seen, that their contributions matter. And on a personal level, gratitude keeps you connected to why you began. It pulls you out of the trap of endless comparison. It reminds you that what you have today was once something you dreamed of. It fuels patience during slow seasons and keeps success from numbing your sense of wonder. It's what makes a leader stand on a completed structure, look at the skyline, and not just see their own brilliance but the web of effort, time, and fortune that made it possible. Gratitude is not the absence of ambition. It is the refinement of it. It gives ambition depth, weight, and endurance. It makes you dangerous because it makes you unshakable. You can be grateful and relentless. You can appreciate and build. These are not opposites, they are complements. Gratitude is the 9th rule of becoming the best at anything because it sustains the soul behind the work. It keeps perspective intact. It ensures that as your world expands, your heart does not shrink. It anchors greatness in humanity. Chapter 10. Adaptability. Adaptability is the ability to bend without breaking, to adjust without losing direction, to evolve without abandoning the core of who you are. It is the silent skill that separates those who last from those who fade. Vision and discipline can build something extraordinary, but if you cannot adapt when the world shifts beneath your feet, even the strongest structure will crack. History is not kind to those who cling to the past in a world that refuses to stand still. Every era has its storms, technological revolutions, cultural shifts, unexpected crises. The ones who rise are those who treat change not as a threat, but as raw material. Thomas Edison's brilliance wasn't just in his inventions but in his ability to pivot ideas when experiments failed. When one method collapsed, he didn't mourn it endlessly, he shifted. Henry Ford revolutionized manufacturing, but even he had to adapt production lines, designs, and methods to meet a rapidly changing society. Andrew Carnegie adjusted his strategies as new markets emerged. Abraham Lincoln adapted his leadership through war, balancing shifting political landscapes, public sentiment, and military realities. Walt Disney, perhaps more than anyone, was a master of adaptability. He began with simple animations, then embraced sound, color, full-length films, theme parks, television, constantly transforming as the world transformed. Adaptability is not weakness. It's strategic evolution. It's what allows you to survive long enough for your vision to matter. A rigid mind breaks in storms. A flexible one finds new routes through them. The Wright brothers didn't reach the sky by stubbornly repeating failed flight attempts. They adapted their designs relentlessly. Elon Musk's companies have survived not by flawless execution but by rapid, bold adaptation in the face of setbacks. Adaptability demands humility. It requires admitting that what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. It requires being willing to learn again, to listen, to adjust. The most dangerous phrase in any endeavor is, "This is how we've always done it." History has buried empires, companies, and individuals who refuse to evolve. At the same time, it has elevated those who stayed anchored to their purpose but flexible in their methods. Adaptability also requires awareness. You can't adapt to what you refuse to see. Leaders who thrive keep their eyes open, not just on their own work but on the changing currents around them. They anticipate shifts. They prepare before the wave hits. Lincoln sensed the changing moral tides and political realities of his time. His ability to read the landscape gave him the leverage to steer a fractured nation. Ford saw how transportation needs were evolving. Disney sensed cultural shifts and technological opportunities and rode them like waves, never standing still long enough to be overtaken. There's also a personal dimension to adaptability. Life will throw unexpected events at you: losses, failures, sudden changes. The difference between those who crumble and those who grow often comes down to adaptability. The most disciplined person can still be broken by change if they refuse to adjust. The most visionary person can still become irrelevant if they insist on using yesterday's tools to build tomorrow's world. Adaptability doesn't mean abandoning your vision, it means finding new ways to manifest it. Edison didn't stop wanting to illuminate the world when one filament failed. He changed the filament. Lincoln didn't abandon the idea of unity when strategies faltered. He adjusted the strategies. Ford didn't abandon cars when models underperformed. He refined the models. Disney didn't abandon imagination when a studio went bankrupt. He found new formats to tell stories. Adaptability is also what keeps you alive creatively. Stagnation kills ambition. When you adapt, you stay mentally sharp, curious, and alive. You keep learning, experimenting, evolving. You stop seeing obstacles as dead ends and start seeing them as invitations to innovate. And this is where adaptability meets resilience. It allows you to transform setbacks into launching pads. History is a constant negotiation between permanence and change. Your purpose, your core, must remain steady, but your methods, your tactics, your tools must evolve. Those who master this dance endure. Those who don't become footnotes. Adaptability is the 10th rule of becoming the best at anything, because greatness is not a single act frozen in time. It is a living process. It breathes, shifts, and grows. If you adapt with purpose, you do not merely survive change, you shape it. Chapter 11. Resilience. Resilience is the steel hidden inside every monument, the invisible core that allows a human being to endure storms that would shatter another. It is not strength in the absence of pressure, it is strength forged because of pressure. Resilience is the quality that allows you to fall, break, bleed, and still rise, not once, but as many times as necessary until the mission is complete. It is the muscle of the soul, and like every muscle, it grows only when tested under weight. Every story of greatness is, at its heart, a story of resilience. Thomas Edison endured over 1,000 failures, and each one could have been the final chapter. Most people would have walked away after 10, after 50, after 100. But resilience transformed his failures into experiments, and his experiments into progress. Henry Ford went bankrupt not once, but twice, before the Ford Motor Company succeeded. Without resilience, his vision would have died in the ruins of those early ventures. Andrew Carnegie faced poverty, labor wars, and fierce competition, but resilience carried him forward, building an empire in the fire of adversity. Abraham Lincoln's life was a symphony of setbacks, political defeats, personal tragedies, relentless criticism. Yet resilience turned those setbacks into stepping stones toward the presidency and into leadership during America's darkest hour. Walt Disney was fired from his first job for lacking creativity. His first studio collapsed. His projects were mocked. Yet resilience turned every rejection into fuel, until his name became synonymous with imagination. Resilience is not the absence of pain. It is the mastery of pain. It is not pretending obstacles don't hurt, it is refusing to let hurt define the ending. Resilience doesn't eliminate struggle, it redefines it. It whispers, "This is part of the process." It takes what was meant to bury you and uses it as soil to grow deeper roots. What makes resilience so rare is that it demands persistence beyond reason. The world often applauds early victories but grows silent when struggle stretches into years. People admire resilience in hindsight, but in the moment, it often looks like madness. Imagine Edison's neighbors, watching him burn through resources night after night, experiment after experiment. Imagine Ford's critics after his second bankruptcy, calling him reckless, delusional. Imagine Lincoln, mocked as a failure after multiple electoral defeats. Imagine Disney, pitching a mouse to investors who laughed in his face. Resilience doesn't look glorious in the moment, it looks stubborn, irrational, almost foolish. Only in retrospect do people call it heroic. Resilience is also what transforms character. Adversity reveals what you are made of. Pressure exposes cracks or builds strength. Without resistance, potential remains untested. Without weight, muscles don't grow. Without storms, roots don't deepen. The people who achieve lasting greatness are those who don't collapse under adversity but are reshaped by it into something stronger. Lincoln's empathy and depth as a leader were carved from personal tragedy. Edison's breakthroughs came from thousands of failed nights. Disney's magical worlds were born from the ashes of rejection. Resilience is not what you practice when things are easy, it is what you discover when things are hardest. But resilience is not passive endurance. It is active adaptation. It is not just taking hits and surviving, it is learning, adjusting, and moving forward stronger. A boxer who only takes punches without striking back will not last long. Resilience is the fighter who absorbs the blow, adjusts strategy, and comes back sharper. It is not mere toughness, it is intelligent persistence. Think of Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years. Resilience did not mean he simply endured in silence. It meant he cultivated patience, sharpened his mind, refined his vision, and walked out stronger than when he entered. Or think of Helen Keller, deaf and blind, who refused to be defined by her limitations. Her resilience was not just survival, it was transformation into an author, speaker, and symbol of hope for millions. These examples remind us that resilience is not exclusive to inventors or industrialists. It is universal to anyone who refuses to surrender their destiny. Resilience also has a spiritual dimension. It requires faith, not always in religion, but in the idea that tomorrow can be different from today. Without that faith, people surrender. With it, they endure. Lincoln's resilience came from his unshakable belief in a unified nation. Edison's resilience came from his faith that light was possible. Disney's resilience came from his belief in imagination's power. Ford's resilience came from his conviction that ordinary people deserved extraordinary tools. When belief and resilience fuse, failure becomes temporary, and success becomes inevitable. Modern society often glamorizes comfort, but comfort is the enemy of resilience. Without tests, resilience never grows. Without failure, resilience never awakens. The ease we crave often hides the strength we need. Every generation that rises does so because it embraces challenge, because it chooses to build resilience instead of avoiding struggle. The athletes who endure grueling training, the entrepreneurs who live through years of obscurity, the leaders who carry nations through crises, they are building resilience muscle that cannot be bought, cannot be handed down, only forged. Resilience also shapes identity. When you survive storms, you no longer see yourself as fragile. You begin to see yourself as unbreakable. Every comeback reinforces that identity. You stop doubting your ability to endure. You stop fearing failure because you know you can rise again. And when fear loses its grip, freedom expands. But resilience must be chosen. Adversity offers the opportunity, but only you can decide whether to rise or collapse. Some face hardship and become bitter, defeated, smaller. Others face the same hardship and become wiser, stronger, larger. The difference is resilience. The difference is the decision to frame pain as training, not as punishment. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. The fire and hammering could destroy the metal, or, under skill, they shape it into something unbreakable. Life is the same. Resilience is the willingness to let adversity shape you into a weapon of purpose rather than a heap of broken pieces. And when resilience is complete, when you have endured enough storms, the fear of storms fades. You don't seek them, but you don't run from them. You know you can withstand them, and that knowledge makes you dangerous. Resilience is the 11th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the quality that ensures you finish what you start. Without it, the first wall ends the journey. With it, every wall becomes a step. Resilience does not guarantee speed, but it guarantees endurance. It guarantees that you will still be standing when others have fallen. And in the end, that alone often decides who builds legacies and who disappears into obscurity. Resilience is the silent roar that says, "You cannot break me. I bend, I bleed, I stumble, but I rise again. Always." Chapter 12. Learning. Learning is the infinite furnace of growth, the quiet engine that never stops running in those who rise above the ordinary. It is not something confined to school, not a certificate, not a line on a resume. Learning is life itself. To live is to learn, and to stop learning is to begin dying long before the body gives out. The greatest mistake most people make is assuming education ends with a diploma. The truth is harsher and greater. The real education begins when the world no longer forces you to learn, when you must choose it yourself, daily, relentlessly, without applause. Every architect of history's great transformations was, before anything else, a relentless learner. Thomas Edison was not a man of mere inspiration. He was a man obsessed with knowledge. His laboratory was a cathedral of learning, shelves filled with experiments, notes, trial after trial, failure after failure recorded with precision. He was a student of light, of energy, of persistence. Henry Ford was not a formally trained engineer, but his hunger to understand machinery, processes, and systems turned him into a revolutionary. Andrew Carnegie began as a telegraph boy, absorbing knowledge from every person he encountered, reading endlessly in borrowed libraries. Abraham Lincoln, born in poverty, schooled himself late into the night by firelight, devouring books, teaching himself law, honing his ability to think, reason, and speak. Walt Disney never stopped learning how to tell stories in new ways, from simple animations to synchronized sound, to full-length feature films, to amusement parks, to television. Each new step was built on a mind that refused to stop absorbing, adapting, expanding. Learning is humility in motion. It is the acknowledgement that no matter how much you know, you are still a beginner compared to what remains unknown. It requires setting aside ego, because ego whispers, "I already know enough." The moment you believe you know enough, you begin the slow descent into irrelevance. The world changes too quickly for stagnant minds. Yesterday's knowledge becomes today's history. Only those who keep learning remain sharp, relevant, dangerous. Edison kept studying while competitors gave up. Lincoln kept refining his thinking while rivals grew complacent. Ford kept evolving his methods while others clung to old models. Disney kept experimenting while critics told him to stop wasting money. The difference was not genius. It was learning that never stopped. Learning is also resilience in another form. It turns failure into curriculum. Where others see defeat, the learner sees data. Edison's so-called failures were lessons that narrowed the path to success. Ford's bankruptcies taught him strategy. Lincoln's losses taught him patience and sharpened his ability to communicate with the public. Disney's bankruptcies taught him how to negotiate, how to structure deals, how to defend intellectual property. Each scar became a teacher. And this is what separates true learners from the masses. They do not waste pain. They extract wisdom from it. But learning is not passive. It requires hunger. It requires curiosity. It requires the deliberate pursuit of understanding beyond convenience. In a world drowning in information, true learners are those who seek wisdom, not just data. They filter, they question, they apply. Learning is not about memorizing facts. It is about connecting them, synthesizing them, transforming them into action. Carnegie read not just for pleasure but for leverage. Lincoln studied law not just to pass exams but to equip himself to lead. Edison didn't study science to quote theories. He studied to ignite the world. Disney didn't study technology to impress engineers. He studied to transport audiences into new worlds. True learning is applied learning. There is also a discipline to learning. It is not something done once in a while, when convenient. It is a daily posture. Lincoln with his books at night. Carnegie with his endless self-education. Ford studying processes relentlessly. Edison in his lab. They weren't waiting for moments of forced instruction. They made learning a lifestyle. And because they did, they were always ahead of their time. While others were content, they were sharpening, refining, expanding. The world punished the complacent and rewarded the hungry. Learning also demands listening. This is where most fail. They want to speak, to prove themselves, to showcase what they know. But the wise know that listening is a superior form of intelligence. Lincoln was a master listener. He absorbed not only from books but from people, from critics, from adversaries. Carnegie listened to mentors, to business partners, even to rivals. Disney listened to the reactions of audiences. Edison listened to his own failures. Learning is not always glamorous. Sometimes it is painful, sometimes humiliating, sometimes uncomfortable. But it is always necessary. Learning also requires unlearning. To adapt, you must sometimes let go of what once worked. Ford's assembly lines were brilliant, but as time went on, even his methods had to evolve. Disney's early styles of animation gave way to new techniques. Edison had to let go of certain failed paths to embrace new ones. Unlearning is as important as learning. It is the pruning of outdated knowledge to make room for growth. Those who cling to the past because they once mastered it often lose the future. Those who release, adapt, and relearn remain powerful. Modern society confuses convenience with mastery. People consume endless streams of content but absorb little. True learning requires depth, reflection, application. Reading a book is not learning unless you wrestle with its ideas. Hearing advice is not learning unless you test it in reality. Failure is not learning unless you extract its meaning. The giants of history learned not by skimming but by digging, not by scrolling but by sitting with knowledge until it transformed them. And learning is endless. That is perhaps its greatest truth. There is no finish line. The moment you think you have arrived, you begin to decline. The greatest leaders of history, even in their final years, were still students. Lincoln was still studying strategy until his death. Edison was experimenting until his final days. Disney was sketching visions of new parks on his deathbed. Lifelong learners do not retire from growth. They die still learning, and in that, they live forever. Learning also multiplies. When you learn deeply, you become a source of learning for others. Carnegie built libraries because he knew the power of knowledge. Lincoln's speeches became lessons for generations. Disney's films became classrooms of imagination. Edison's inventions became textbooks of innovation. True learners don't hoard knowledge. They spread it, amplify it, make it a legacy. Learning is the 12th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the only guarantee of evolution. Without it, brilliance decays. With it, even the smallest mind can grow into a giant. It is the decision to never stop sharpening, never stop questioning, never stop growing. It is the humility to say, I do not know enough, and I never will, and that is my strength. Because the world belongs not to the one who knows the most today, but to the one who keeps learning tomorrow. Chapter 13. Focus. Focus is the weapon that turns scattered energy into unstoppable force. It is the art of narrowing your attention so fiercely that distractions dissolve, and only the mission remains. In a world screaming for your attention, a world of flashing screens, endless noise, constant interruptions, focus has become rarer than genius and more valuable than gold. Talent without focus burns out. Discipline without focus scatters. Vision without focus remains a dream. But when a human being focuses, truly focuses, the impossible bends. History's greatest builders were not the most gifted in every category. They were not superhuman. They were men and women who mastered the ability to direct their attention like a laser. Thomas Edison could have pursued hundreds of ideas. He had the imagination for it. But he focused on light, and that focus reshaped human existence. Henry Ford could have built many kinds of machines, but his focus on affordable automobiles changed how humanity moved. Andrew Carnegie focused his will on steel, and in doing so, built the backbone of modern industry. Abraham Lincoln, through all his failures and distractions, fixed his focus on the preservation of the Union, and because of that focus, the United States endured. Walt Disney had countless creative impulses, but his focus on storytelling and imagination gave the world characters, films, and parks that have lasted generations. Focus is the multiplier. 1,000 scattered rays of sunlight do little, but when concentrated through a lens, they ignite fire. Human energy is the same. Most people spend their lives diffusing their energy across too many things, chasing trends, switching goals, starting and stopping, living in a constant state of fragmentation. They burn energy but produce little. Focus is what separates noise from music, activity from achievement, existence from impact. But focus does not come easily. It must be trained. The world is designed to fracture your attention. Every notification, every headline, every demand from others, it all pulls you away from your center. To focus requires the strength to say no, the discipline to eliminate, the courage to silence what does not serve the mission. This is why clarity and purpose matter so deeply, because without knowing what you truly want, you cannot know what to focus on. Once you know, focus becomes ruthless. It is not about doing everything. It is about doing what matters most, again and again, until it yields results. Focus is also endurance. Anyone can concentrate for a moment. True focus is sustained over years. Edison focused for decades on invention. Ford focused for decades on manufacturing. Lincoln focused for decades on law, politics, and ultimately unity. Disney focused his entire life on imagination. This kind of long focus looks obsessive to outsiders, but obsession in the service of purpose is what builds legacies. The Wright brothers spent years in obscurity, focused on flight while others mocked them. Steve Jobs, decades later, poured relentless focus into design, rejecting countless ideas to preserve a single vision. Elon Musk splits his focus only across ventures that align with his overarching missions, energy, exploration, technology, and drives them forward with an intensity most cannot comprehend. The danger of a distracted mind is not that it produces nothing, It produces mediocrity. A little progress in many directions, but no mastery in any. The graveyards of history are filled with brilliant but unfocused people who started projects but never finished, who chased every glittering distraction but never created something enduring. The world does not remember the almosts. It remembers the finished. And finished requires focus. Focus is not just about saying yes to the right things. It is about saying no to the wrong things. Every yes is also a no to something else. Focus demands sacrifice. Edison sacrificed leisure. Ford sacrificed stability in his early years. Lincoln sacrificed popularity. Disney sacrificed comfort. They were willing to let go of the trivial in order to seize the monumental. The price of focus is high, but the price of distraction is higher. It is a life spent in fragments, never whole. Focus also creates flow. When your attention is fully absorbed in the work, when hours pass unnoticed because you are consumed, you enter a state of creative fire. This is where breakthroughs happen. But flow is not possible without focus. A mind constantly interrupted never enters the depth where real creation lives. Edison in his lab, Disney in his sketches, Lincoln at his desk writing speeches, Ford on the factory floor, these were not casual moments. They were states of complete absorption, where the outside world fell silent, and the inner world shaped the future. But focus is not rigidity. It is not stubbornness that refuses to adjust. True focus is dynamic. It is knowing your target so well that you can adjust your methods without losing sight of the goal. Lincoln adjusted his strategies in war without losing sight of unity. Ford adapted his processes but never lost sight of affordable cars. Edison tested thousands of materials but never lost sight of light. Disney shifted mediums, animation, film, parks, television, but never lost sight of imagination. Focus is not about clinging blindly. It is about holding the destination firmly while navigating the journey flexibly. Another dimension of focus is intensity. When you focus, you must not only narrow your attention but deepen it. Shallow focus produces shallow results. Deep focus produces breakthroughs. This requires solitude, silence, time away from the noise. The greatest work of history was not built in constant chatter. It was built in long, deep hours of uninterrupted attention. In today's world, carving out such time is revolutionary. But it is also essential. Without depth, focus dissolves. Focus is also identity. You become what you focus on. If you focus on fear, you become fearful. If you focus on weakness, you become weak. If you focus on possibility, you become expansive. If you focus on mastery, you become great. The mind is shaped by attention. The sculptor does not shape marble by glancing at it occasionally. He shapes it by focusing his chisel again and again, stroke by stroke. You are the sculptor, and your life is the stone. Focus determines the form it takes. And focus must outlast distraction. There will always be critics, noise, temptations. The world will always offer easier paths, shortcuts, new glittering objects. Focus is the refusal to scatter. It is the warrior holding the line while chaos surrounds. It is Lincoln staying on mission while enemies screamed. It is Ford building while competitors mocked. It is Edison working while others slept. It is Disney imagining when no one else believed. Focus is what makes the impossible possible because it directs energy until the stone cracks, until the lock opens, until the wall falls. Focus is the 13th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the force that turns power into precision. Without it, even brilliance dissolves. With it, even ordinary effort compounds into extraordinary achievement. Focus is not merely concentration, it is consecration. It is devoting your attention, your time, your life, to something that outlives you. And when the world looks back, it will not remember how many things you tried. It will remember the one thing you mastered, the one legacy you focused on until it became unshakable. Chapter 14: Sacrifice. Sacrifice is the price of greatness, the toll demanded at every gate of history. No empire has ever been built without it, no invention ever realized without it, no dream ever brought to life without its cost. To sacrifice is to give up what is easier, what is safer, what is more immediately comfortable, for the sake of what is larger, deeper, and eternal. It is the willingness to burn bridges to mediocrity in order to walk across the unsteady path of destiny. Most people recoil from sacrifice because it feels like loss. But the paradox of history is that sacrifice is never true loss. It is exchange. You exchange comfort for growth, distraction for clarity, safety for destiny. Those who refuse to sacrifice remain prisoners of what is easy. Those who embrace sacrifice become architects of what is lasting. Consider the lives of the giants who altered the world. Thomas Edison sacrificed sleep, leisure, even health, to spend endless nights inside his workshop. The world mocked his obsession, but those sacrifices bought us light itself. Henry Ford sacrificed acceptance from the elites of his time. He was ridiculed for trying to build cars for ordinary people. That sacrifice gave birth to a revolution in transportation. Andrew Carnegie sacrificed the simplicity of a small life. He endured brutal competition, long hours, and relentless pressure to transform himself from a poor immigrant boy into an industrial titan. Abraham Lincoln sacrificed popularity, safety, and even his peace of mind in order to hold together a fractured nation. Walt Disney sacrificed stability. He lost companies, he went bankrupt, he mortgaged his own future again and again, but in exchange, he gave the world castles of imagination. Sacrifice is always misunderstood in the moment. Outsiders see only the cost, not the reward. They see Edison as obsessive, Ford as reckless, Carnegie as ruthless, Lincoln as stubborn, Disney as foolish. Only later does the world see that their sacrifices were investments, that the comfort they gave up purchased a legacy no comfort could buy. Sacrifice is also personal. It does not always look like dramatic suffering. Sometimes it is smaller, quieter, but just as powerful. It is the sacrifice of time spent scrolling so you can build. It is the sacrifice of sleep to rise earlier, of money invested in growth instead of wasted on fleeting pleasure, of relationships that no longer align with your path. Sacrifice is rarely glamorous, but it is always decisive. Every moment of greatness demands, what are you willing to give up to go further? The danger is that most want the crown without the cross, the victory without the cost. They admire the finished skyscraper but recoil from the years of scaffolding. They want the product, not the process. They want to be remembered but refuse to give up what keeps them forgettable. That is why so few reach true mastery. They negotiate with sacrifice, offering it only when convenient. History does not reward the convenient. It rewards the committed. Look at Lincoln again. He sacrificed his health, his rest, his peace, to carry the weight of a divided nation. Every letter he wrote, every sleepless night he endured, every political wound he took, they were sacrifices that secured freedom for millions. He did not do this because it was easy. He did it because he understood that sacrifice is the currency of transformation. Look at Carnegie. He worked brutal hours as a child, his family barely surviving. But he sacrificed leisure to read in borrowed libraries, to educate himself, to grow. Those sacrifices of time built the foundation for an empire. Later in life, he sacrificed wealth itself, giving away most of his fortune to fund libraries, universities, and institutions that still stand today. He understood that wealth kept is temporary, but wealth sacrificed for knowledge is eternal. Look at Disney. Again and again he risked everything. He sacrificed financial safety to push animation further. He sacrificed pride when he was betrayed by partners. He sacrificed security to buy land in Florida that the world laughed at. Those sacrifices built Disneyland, Disney World, and a storytelling empire that outlived him by generations. Sacrifice demands faith. You give up something tangible for something invisible, something certain for something uncertain. Edison couldn't guarantee the light bulb would work. Ford couldn't guarantee the assembly line would succeed. Lincoln couldn't guarantee the Union would hold. Disney couldn't guarantee people would believe in his worlds. Sacrifice is a gamble, but it is a gamble the great are willing to make, because they know that to cling to comfort is the greater risk. Sacrifice also purifies. It forces you to decide what matters most. When you give up what is secondary, what is essential grows clearer. Sacrifice strips away the unnecessary. It sharpens. It tests. It refines. The soldier who sacrifices ease becomes disciplined. The student who sacrifices distraction becomes wise. The leader who sacrifices popularity becomes effective. Sacrifice burns away the trivial, leaving only the essential behind. Modern society teaches avoidance of sacrifice. It sells shortcuts, comfort, instant gratification. But history proves that nothing of substance is built that way. Castles, empires, inventions, revolutions, all of them were born in sacrifice. The Roman roads, the Gothic cathedrals, the industrial revolutions, every stone was paid for by men and women willing to sacrifice sweat, blood, and often their very lives. The world you live in now is built on the sacrifices of those who came before you. To refuse sacrifice is to break the chain of greatness that runs through history. Sacrifice is not endless suffering for suffering's sake. It is calculated, purposeful. It is not reckless abandonment of all joy. It is deliberate choice to trade lower pleasures for higher purpose. To sacrifice time wasted so you can invest in time that builds. To sacrifice immediate gratification so you can reap long-term harvests. To sacrifice ego so you can serve something larger than yourself. And here is the truth that few want to hear. The greater your vision, the greater your sacrifice must be. If you want to be average, your sacrifices will be small. If you want to be remembered, your sacrifices must be monumental. Edison sacrificed thousands of nights. Lincoln sacrificed his peace. Carnegie sacrificed comfort. Disney sacrificed security. Ford sacrificed approval. Every legend story is a ledger of sacrifices written in blood, sweat, and will. Sacrifice is the 14th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the price of entry. The question is not whether you will sacrifice. The question is whether you will sacrifice what weakens you, or whether you will sacrifice your future by clinging to comfort. One way or another, a price will be paid. Those who choose their sacrifices wisely buy greatness. Those who refuse to sacrifice lose it all. Sacrifice is the fire in which destiny is forged. And in the end, when the world looks back at your life, it will not remember what you kept. It will remember what you gave. Chapter 15. Consistency. Consistency is the silent force that transforms sparks into flames and flames into infernos. It is not the dramatic burst of effort once in a while that creates greatness, but the steady rhythm of daily action, repeated so faithfully that it compounds into destiny. Where talent gives potential and discipline creates structure, consistency is what cements it all into permanence. Without consistency, even the brightest vision withers. With it, even ordinary effort grows into extraordinary legacy. Look at Thomas Edison once more. It was not a single night of brilliance that gave the world light. It was thousands of nights, one after another, filled with experiments, failures, adjustments, and relentless trying. His genius was not a single strike of inspiration. It was consistency so unyielding that eventually reality bent to his will. Henry Ford did not transform transportation through a single invention. He built factories, refined assembly lines, improved processes every day, week after week, year after year, until the world was moving differently. Andrew Carnegie didn't build an empire through one bold move, but through decades of consistent growth, investment, reinvestment, and expansion. Abraham Lincoln did not become the leader who saved the Union in a single moment. He had spent years consistently developing his mind, his speeches, his strategies, enduring defeat after defeat until the man was tempered like iron. Walt Disney didn't create magic in one drawing. He built, failed, built again, drew again, produced again, over and over, until imagination became infrastructure. Consistency is underestimated because it is not flashy. It rarely feels heroic in the moment. It feels repetitive, ordinary, sometimes even dull. Waking up early again. Practicing again. Writing again. Training again. Showing up again. People crave novelty, they want constant excitement. But history is written by those who endure monotony for the sake of mastery. A pianist does not master the instrument by playing only when inspired. They play scales daily until their fingers obey without hesitation. An athlete does not dominate by practicing when convenient. They practice drills, thousands of repetitions, until their body moves with precision under pressure. An inventor does not change the world by trying once. They keep testing, failing, and refining. Consistency is unglamorous, until the results make the world stare in awe. Consistency is also the proof of belief. Anyone can act with passion when they feel inspired. Few can act when they feel nothing at all. To show up day after day, even when tired, even when discouraged, even when progress feels invisible, that is belief in action. That is saying, I trust the process enough to keep walking even when the destination is out of sight. Edison believed so deeply in light that he kept working in the dark. Lincoln believed so deeply in unity that he kept speaking even when nobody listened. Disney believed so deeply in imagination that he kept drawing even when every investor turned him away. Their consistency was their belief embodied. Consistency is not perfection. It does not mean you never miss, never stumble, never fail. It means you return. Again and again you return. You recover faster, you pick yourself up, you refuse to stay down. The power of consistency is not in never breaking, it is in never staying broken. A runner may stumble, but if they keep running every day, their body adapts. A writer may miss days, but if they keep writing, the book gets finished. Consistency is resilience applied to time. Think of water dripping on stone. One drop is nothing. 100 drops barely leave a mark. But over months, years, decades, that dripping water carves a groove into solid rock. The rock is harder, stronger, heavier, yet the water wins, not by force, but by consistency. That is the nature of greatness. It does not appear overnight. It is carved slowly, invisibly, until suddenly the form emerges and people call it genius. But behind the genius was 1,000 days of consistency that no one applauded. Consistency also compounds. The small actions, repeated, create exponential growth. Reading 10 pages a day seems small, but over years, it builds libraries in your mind. Practicing a skill for 1 hour a day seems minor, but over a decade, it builds mastery that others call talent. Saving a little money consistently builds empires of wealth. Training consistently builds strength and stamina. The results seem invisible at first, then they appear all at once, and the world calls it sudden success. But sudden success is only visible consistency. Consistency demands patience. This is why most abandon it. They want results quickly. They want the seed to sprout tomorrow, the building to rise instantly, the audience to arrive overnight. When results delay, they quit. But those who endure, who water the seed daily, who lay the bricks consistently, who keep creating even when nobody watches, they are the ones who reap the harvest. Lincoln endured years of obscurity. Edison endured years of mockery. Disney endured years of bankruptcy. Ford endured years of skepticism. But they did not stop. They did not break the chain of consistency. And so, time eventually surrendered to them. Consistency is also identity. When you show up daily, you stop seeing yourself as someone trying. You start seeing yourself as someone who is. The runner becomes a runner, not because they ran once, but because they run every day. The writer becomes a writer, not because they wrote once, but because they write consistently. The leader becomes a leader, not because they led once, but because they lead consistently. Consistency is what turns effort into identity. Modern distractions are the enemy of consistency. The world sells instant gratification, quick fixes, shortcuts. It tempts you to abandon the path when progress feels slow. But the wise know that every day missed is momentum lost. Every day gained is momentum multiplied. Consistency is war against distraction, against excuses, against impatience. It is the steady march while others chase shiny objects and lose themselves in circles. Consistency also builds trust. People follow leaders who are steady. Investors trust creators who deliver consistently. Audiences trust performers who show up consistently. Trust is not built in one grand gesture. It is built in daily reliability. Lincoln earned trust not by one speech, but by consistently standing for unity. Edison earned trust not by one invention, but by consistently delivering breakthroughs. Disney earned trust not by one film, but by consistently producing imagination after imagination. Consistency is the 15th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the proof of seriousness. It is easy to start. It is easy to dream. It is easy to act once. But to keep showing up, when it hurts, when it's boring, when it feels invisible, that is rare. That is what builds empires. That is what builds legacies. The truth is simple. Greatness is not built in explosions. It is built in repetition. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One consistent act after another until the world bows to the weight of your persistence. Consistency is the drumbeat of destiny. Those who master it will outlast, outbuild, and outlive those who rely only on bursts of passion. Because passion burns hot and dies fast. Consistency burns steady and lights the world forever. Chapter 16. Patience. Patience is the overlooked virtue of greatness, the invisible thread that binds discipline, sacrifice, consistency, and resilience together. It is the ability to wait without surrendering, to endure without collapsing, to move steadily when the world demands urgency, and to hold your ground when the harvest is still beneath the soil. Patience is not weakness, nor passivity, nor laziness. Patience is controlled strength, the mastery of time, the refusal to be ruled by haste, the confidence that greatness cannot be rushed. Look through history, and you will see that every enduring achievement was built on the foundation of patience. Thomas Edison did not rush the light bulb. He tested thousands of variations, patiently recording each failure, knowing that illumination would not be given to the impatient. Henry Ford's revolution did not happen in 1 year. He patiently refined his production lines until the system itself became a work of art. Andrew Carnegie rose from poverty not overnight, but through years of patience. Patience in learning, in seizing opportunities, in reinvesting, in expanding. Abraham Lincoln's presidency was not the product of sudden fame, but of decades of patient endurance through defeat after defeat. Walt Disney did not conjure empires of imagination instantly. His first projects failed, his company collapsed, his ideas were mocked. But he kept building, patiently stacking brick upon brick, drawing upon drawing, film upon film, until the vision outgrew the ridicule. Patience is the antidote to desperation. The desperate want everything now. They cannot wait, and because they cannot wait, they settle. They cut corners, they quit too early, they demand fruit when the tree is still a seedling. The patient, however, understand the rhythm of time. They know that roots must grow underground before branches can stretch upward. They know that failure is not final but part of the process. They know that delay is not denial. They move forward, not with frantic speed, but with relentless steadiness. Patience is also faith in action. To be patient is to believe in what is unseen. Edison believed light was possible before it existed. Lincoln believed in unity before it was visible. Disney believed in worlds that were still drawings on paper. Ford believed in cars for the masses before anyone could imagine it. Patience is what allows belief to survive the winters of doubt. It is what keeps the seed alive beneath the frozen ground until spring arrives. Without patience, belief collapses under pressure. With patience, belief becomes unstoppable. But patience does not mean inaction. It does not mean sitting idle, waiting for miracles. True patience is active. It is working steadily, planting seeds, watering them, protecting them, knowing that the harvest will not come tomorrow but will come eventually. The farmer who demands immediate fruit will starve. The farmer who waits patiently, tending the soil daily, will reap abundance. The builder who abandons the project because the foundation takes too long will never see the walls rise. The builder who continues, patiently laying brick after brick, will stand beneath towers others thought impossible. Patience is also the master of emotion. Impatience is fueled by fear, fear of missing out, fear of being behind, fear of failing. But patience is fueled by confidence. It says, I am not late. I am not behind. I am on time, because I am aligned with the rhythm of my mission, not the noise of the crowd. Lincoln was patient in the face of enormous pressure, knowing that rushing decisions would fracture the union further. Edison was patient in the face of mockery, knowing that the light he sought was worth the ridicule. Disney was patient with ideas the world laughed at, knowing that imagination needed time to take form. Patience is emotional control, the refusal to let urgency destroy strategy. Patience also tests commitment. Anyone can act when results come quickly. Only the truly committed keep acting when results hide. The impatient give up because progress feels invisible. The patient know that invisibility is part of growth. When a seed is planted, nothing appears on the surface for weeks. The impatient dig it up, declaring it dead. The patient wait, knowing roots are forming underground. The same is true in mastery. Skills often improve invisibly before they reveal themselves. Strength builds slowly. Knowledge accumulates quietly. Momentum gathers silently. The patient keep working when nothing seems to change, and then, suddenly, the change is undeniable. Think of Nelson Mandela, 27 years in prison, and yet patient enough to believe that his cause would one day triumph. Think of Helen Keller, years of struggle to learn, to communicate, to grow, yet patient enough to endure every failure until breakthrough arrived. Patience is not glamorous. It does not produce applause in the moment. It produces endurance that outlasts generations. Modern society hates patience. Everything is engineered for speed, instant messages, instant purchases, instant validation. People confuse speed with progress. But the truth is simple: what comes fast often fades fast. What is built slowly, patiently, deliberately, that is what lasts. Cathedrals were built across decades, sometimes centuries, by men who knew they would never see the final stone placed. They labored with patience because they understood they were part of something greater than themselves. That patience gave us structures that still stand today, while the hurried projects of the modern world crumble within years. Patience is also perspective. It teaches you to value the journey, not just the destination. The impatient despise the process, wanting only the end. The patient understand that the process is where strength is built, character is forged, wisdom is gained. The impatient curse the detour, the patient learn from it. The impatient hate the delay, the patient see what it reveals. The impatient chase the trophy, the patient become the kind of person who deserves it. Patience does not mean you never feel restless. It means you master restlessness. You turn it into energy, into focus, into endurance. The impatient are enslaved by their emotions. The patient enslave their emotions and make them serve the mission. And patience, like all virtues, compounds. The more you practice it, the stronger it grows. Every delay you endure without breaking builds your capacity. Every season of waiting without surrender builds your strength. Every failure endured with patience becomes a stepping stone. With time, you become unshakable. You become someone who cannot be rushed, cannot be manipulated, cannot be broken by delay. You move with the rhythm of your vision, not the pace of the crowd. Patience is the 16th rule of becoming the best at anything because mastery takes time, and time cannot be cheated. You can accelerate skill with focus, with discipline, with sacrifice, but you cannot eliminate time. You must walk the path step by step, day by day, year by year. The impatient fall away. The patient remain. And in the end, history belongs not to the fastest, but to the most enduring. Patience is not waiting. Patience is working, building, growing, believing, without demanding that tomorrow reward you for today's effort. It is the supreme confidence that one day, if you remain steady, the harvest will come. And when it does, the world will call it sudden success. But you will know, it was patience all along. Chapter 17, Courage. Courage is the spark that ignites action when fear tries to smother it. It is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more than fear. Courage is the bridge between vision and reality, the fire that makes sacrifice possible, the voice that steadies consistency, the anchor that holds when storms rage and patience feels unbearable. Every great figure, every monumental shift in history, every revolution that changed the fate of nations, all of it was born not in comfort, not in certainty, but in courage. Fear is universal. It visits everyone, the powerful, the poor, the talented, the broken. The question has never been whether you feel fear. The question is whether you allow it to rule you. Most people do. They let fear dictate their decisions, shrink their lives, kill their dreams before those dreams even breathe. But the few, the very few who become remembered, are those who feel fear fully and walk forward anyway. Thomas Edison felt the fear of ridicule every time his experiments failed, yet courage drove him back into the lab. Henry Ford felt the fear of rejection as banks dismissed him, as critics mocked him, as failure stalked him, but courage kept him building until the engine roared. Andrew Carnegie felt the fear of poverty pressing down on him, but courage drove him to seize every opportunity, to bet on himself again and again. Abraham Lincoln felt the crushing fear of leading a fractured nation into civil war, knowing that every decision could end lives and end the Union itself, yet courage gave him the strength to hold steady. Walt Disney felt the fear of bankruptcy, betrayal, collapse, yet courage whispered, "Create again," and he obeyed. Courage is the birthplace of destiny. Without it, even the brightest vision remains locked inside the mind. Without it, discipline collapses under the weight of doubt. Without it, sacrifice feels unbearable. But with courage, the impossible becomes negotiable, and the negotiable becomes inevitable. Courage is not grand speeches or heroic gestures. Sometimes courage is small and quiet. It is waking up another morning when you feel broken. It is facing the critic when your voice trembles. It is taking the first step when the path is dark. Lincoln's courage was not always thunderous. Sometimes it was a tired man signing another letter, attending another meeting, enduring another attack, choosing not to quit when quitting would have been easier. Edison's courage was not always glamorous. Sometimes it was simply the decision to light another filament, to try again when exhaustion demanded he stop. Disney's courage was not always cinematic. Sometimes it was signing another loan, risking another dollar, drawing another sketch. This is the truth. Courage looks ordinary in the moment. Only later, when the results are visible, does the world call it extraordinary. Courage is also contagious. When one person dares, others find their own strength. When Lincoln stood firm, millions found courage in his steadiness. When Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and declared a dream, courage rippled through a generation. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, her courage ignited a movement. When Amelia Earhart flew into skies no woman had ever crossed, she infused courage into countless others. Courage spreads. It multiplies. It awakens dormant strength in hearts that were waiting for a signal. But courage is not blind recklessness. It is not foolish risk for its own sake. It is calculated defiance of fear, rooted in vision and purpose. It does not leap without reason. It leaps because the mission demands it. Lincoln did not fight to fight. He fought because unity demanded it. Edison did not risk failure endlessly for ego. He risked because he believed light was necessary. Ford did not challenge convention for rebellion. He challenged because he believed ordinary people deserved mobility. Disney did not bankrupt himself for pride. He did it because he believed in the transformative power of imagination. Courage is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is fear harnessed, aimed, and overcome in service of something greater. The world belongs to the courageous because most of humanity is paralyzed by fear. Fear of failure. Fear of ridicule. Fear of pain. Fear of rejection. Fear of being different. And so, most live in quiet prisons, never daring to test the boundaries. The courageous break those walls. They redefine what is possible. And because of them, the horizon expands for everyone. Courage is also endurance. It is not just a single bold moment, but the decision to keep being bold again and again. It is not a one-time act, but a lifestyle. Nelson Mandela's courage was not a single act of defiance. It was 27 years of patient strength. Mother Teresa's courage was not one day of service, but a lifetime of choosing compassion in the face of suffering. Courage is not one battle. It is a war fought every day against fear. And courage requires self-trust. You cannot be courageous if you do not trust yourself to endure the consequences of your choices. Edison trusted himself to endure failure. Lincoln trusted himself to endure criticism. Ford trusted himself to endure bankruptcy. Disney trusted himself to endure humiliation. The courageous do not pretend consequences don't exist. They simply believe they can bear them. Modern society often glorifies safety. It teaches us to avoid risk, to seek comfort, to never step outside the approved lines. But comfort is the enemy of courage. And without courage, comfort eventually becomes a cage. You may survive in it, but you will never live. The courageous know that comfort is temporary and that the pain of regret is eternal. Better to fail daring than to succeed shrinking. Better to fall in battle than to rot in safety. Courage is also clarity. It strips away illusions. It shows you what you truly value. Because when you face fear, you discover whether your purpose is stronger than your panic. Many claim to want greatness, but the moment fear arrives, they fold. Courage is the filter. It separates those who only want greatness from those who are willing to bleed for it. Think of the Wright brothers. They risked not only money but their lives in fragile machines of wood and canvas, because their courage was stronger than their fear of falling. Think of Florence Nightingale, stepping into war zones to treat the wounded when women were told to stay silent, her courage stronger than social convention. Think of Galileo, standing against the entire weight of the church to declare that the earth revolved around the sun, his courage stronger than the threat of persecution. Every advance, every revolution, every act of progress has been carried on the back of courage. Courage is the 17th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the gatekeeper. You can prepare, study, plan, discipline yourself endlessly, but at some point, you will face a moment when fear demands obedience. That is the decisive point. That is where destiny is chosen. Those who bow to fear fade into anonymity. Those who choose courage carve their names into time. Courage is not saying, "I am not afraid." It is saying, "I am afraid, but I will move anyway." And that simple choice, to move anyway, is the foundation of every empire, every invention, every legacy. Chapter 18, Leadership. Leadership is not a title, nor a position, nor a rank etched on a door. Leadership is responsibility, sacrifice, vision in motion. It is the art of carrying the weight of others on your shoulders while still walking forward. It is not popularity, it is conviction. It is not comfort, it is burden. Leadership is the willingness to stand in storms others cannot endure, to take arrows others cannot bear, and to make decisions others are too afraid to make. True leadership is rare because true responsibility is heavy, and most run from weight. The pages of history are carved with names of those who bore that weight, men and women who chose to stand when others sat, to act when others hesitated. Abraham Lincoln is perhaps the purest example. He did not inherit peace or prosperity, he inherited a nation ripping itself apart. He did not govern in calm waters, he governed in fire. Leadership for him meant watching rivers of blood flow across the land, knowing every decision he signed cost lives, knowing every hesitation risked the collapse of the Union. And yet he carried it. He did not fold under criticism, though critics tore him apart daily. He did not abandon his vision, though even allies doubted him. He endured, and because of his leadership, the Union survived. Thomas Edison led not armies, but minds. In his lab, he was the general of innovation, marshalling teams of assistants, guiding experiments, creating a culture where failure was data, where persistence was law. His leadership was not loud speeches but relentless example. He outworked everyone, and in doing so, set a standard that pulled others upward. Henry Ford led by vision and by system. He created not just a product, but a movement. His assembly line was not merely an invention, it was a philosophy of leadership in practice, organizing men, machines, and methods into a symphony of productivity. His leadership was not without flaws, but it reshaped the structure of industry forever. Andrew Carnegie, who rose from poverty to become one of the richest men in the world, understood that leadership meant building more than wealth. It meant constructing systems, opportunities, and eventually libraries, schools, and institutions that outlived him. His leadership was not simply of men but of an entire age of industry. And Walt Disney, perhaps one of the most underestimated leaders of all time, did not just lead artists. He led imaginations. He took a ragtag group of animators, dreamers, architects, and laborers, and inspired them to see castles where others saw swamps, to see kingdoms where others saw sketches, to see possibility where others saw ruin. His leadership was not only creative but deeply human. He made people believe. And belief is the ultimate form of leadership. Leadership is not about commanding. It is about inspiring. Anyone can order others around. That is management. Leadership is something deeper. It pulls, it attracts, it compels people to follow because they want to, not because they must. Lincoln did not drag the Union forward by chains. He pulled it forward by vision, by moral authority, by sheer endurance of will. Disney did not force his animators to draw. He made them want to stay up late, to push the limits of imagination, because they believed in him. Edison did not force his team to keep working through endless failures. His example infected them with persistence. Leadership is also sacrifice. It means taking blame when things go wrong and giving credit when things go right. Lincoln absorbed oceans of criticism and rarely deflected. Carnegie gave his fortune away because he understood that leadership outlives wealth. True leaders understand that leadership is not privilege. It is responsibility. And responsibility always costs. Leadership is lonely. To lead is to stand apart, to see what others cannot yet see, to make choices others do not yet understand. The crowd wants comfort. The leader must often choose conflict. The crowd wants safety. The leader must risk. The crowd wants to be liked. The leader must be willing to be hated. This loneliness is why so few truly lead. They crave applause, not progress. But the real leaders accept solitude, because they know that time, not popularity, is the final judge. Lincoln was hated in his own time. Disney was ridiculed. Ford was mocked. Edison was dismissed. Carnegie was attacked. And yet, history vindicated them. Leadership is also service. The leader does not exist for themselves. They exist for the mission and for the people. Without service, leadership decays into tyranny. Lincoln served the ideal of unity. Carnegie served progress through industry and philanthropy. Edison served the cause of invention. Ford served mobility. Disney served imagination. Their legacies endure because their leadership was not just about personal gain, but about elevating others. Another truth, leadership requires courage multiplied. It is one thing to be courageous for yourself. It is another to be courageous for millions. Every decision Lincoln made risked the lives of thousands. Every decision Ford made risked the livelihoods of workers. Every decision Disney made risked the futures of employees and families. Leaders must feel fear and walk forward anyway, not just for themselves, but for all who follow. Leadership also demands vision. A leader without vision is a blind guide. The people may follow for a while, but eventually they will wander into ruin. Vision anchors leadership. Edison's vision of light. Ford's vision of mobility. Lincoln's vision of unity. Disney's vision of wonder. Vision is what makes leadership magnetic. It gives direction to sacrifice, meaning to struggle, and hope to those who endure. But vision without execution is hallucination. Leadership must translate vision into action. The leader does not just dream, they decide. They do. They execute. They move. They act as the bridge between the possible and the actual. Lincoln did not just speak of freedom. He signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Ford did not just imagine cars. He built them. Disney did not just sketch. He constructed. Edison did not just theorize. He lit the night. Leadership is also accountability. A true leader holds themselves to a higher standard than anyone else. They do not demand what they do not embody. Lincoln read, studied, labored, suffered alongside his people. Edison worked harder than anyone in his lab. Disney risked his own fortune before asking investors to risk theirs. Ford lived in his factories, refining them personally. Leadership without accountability is hypocrisy, and hypocrisy destroys trust. Leadership is trust. Without it, no one will follow. Trust is not built on charisma, but on consistency. People follow leaders who show up again and again, who endure, who remain steady under pressure. They follow leaders who do not vanish when storms come. They follow leaders who speak truth even when it is bitter. Trust is the currency of leadership, and it is earned only through time, through scars, through sacrifice. Modern culture confuses leadership with visibility. A leader is not someone with followers on a screen. A leader is someone who carries responsibility in reality. Leadership is not likes, it is lives. Leadership is not applause, it is action. It is not being admired from afar, it is being followed into fire. Chapter 19, Legacy. Legacy is the shadow your life casts after you are gone, the echo that continues when your voice has fallen silent, the structures and ideas that remain standing when your body returns to dust. It is the final measure of greatness, the proof that your existence mattered not only to you, but to the generations that follow. Legacy is immortality carved in the fabric of time, not the shallow immortality of fame, which fades, but the enduring immortality of impact, which endures. Legacy is not an accident. It is the result of vision, discipline, sacrifice, courage, leadership, and above all, persistence across time. A legacy is built in daily actions, in consistent choices, in the alignment of purpose with endurance. Every brick you lay, every risk you take, every principle you refuse to betray becomes part of the foundation of your legacy. And history remembers not the noise of your moment, but the weight of what you leave behind. Consider Abraham Lincoln. He was not adored in his own day. He was ridiculed, hated, and assassinated. Many saw only a flawed, awkward man struggling through impossible times. But his legacy outgrew his lifetime. His words, carved into stone, still echo through the ages: government of the people, by the people, for the people. His Emancipation Proclamation, his steady vision for unity, his resilience in the fire of war, these became pillars of democracy itself. Lincoln's body died in 1865, but his legacy still breathes, shaping nations, inspiring leaders, reminding humanity that liberty is worth blood and endurance. Consider Thomas Edison. He left more than patents. He left light itself. He left a world that no longer ended at sunset, a world that could work, build, create, and dream long after the sky went dark. His inventions did not merely make him wealthy, they reshaped civilization. That is legacy. Not wealth you can count, but transformation you cannot measure. Consider Henry Ford. His legacy was not just cars, it was mobility. It was the democratization of travel. It was highways stretching across continents, families exploring beyond their towns, economies opening because of movement. He left behind an industrial philosophy that still defines manufacturing. That is legacy. Consider Andrew Carnegie. His legacy is written not only in steel but in libraries, universities, foundations. He poured his fortune into knowledge, and because of that, millions of minds have been sharpened long after his empire of steel melted into history. His wealth ended with him, but his legacy outlived him. And Walt Disney. His legacy was not merely animation. It was the belief that imagination could become infrastructure, that dreams could be built into bricks, castles, and kingdoms. Today, children and adults across the globe enter worlds Disney never lived to see completed, and yet they are his. His signature became a symbol, his vision a culture, his imagination a multigenerational inheritance. Legacy is what remains when your story is no longer told by you. It is what others carry forward because you dared to build it. It is the proof that you lived for more than survival, more than comfort, more than yourself. But legacy requires sacrifice. To build something that lasts, you must give up what is temporary. Comfort dies with you. Wealth may die with you. Titles and accolades will fade. But what you build into others, what you create in the world, what you plant in the soil of time, that is eternal. Lincoln gave his life, and his legacy was freedom. Edison gave his sleep, and his legacy was light. Carnegie gave his wealth, and his legacy was knowledge. Disney gave his security, and his legacy was imagination. Legacy also requires intention. It is not enough to drift. To leave a legacy, you must decide what kind of mark you wish to leave. Will you leave behind bitterness or inspiration? Will you leave ashes or monuments? Will your children, your community, your nation inherit excuses, or will they inherit structures, principles, and hope? Every day you are writing your legacy. Not in speeches but in choices. Not in grand gestures but in consistency. Legacy is also responsibility. The greater your power, the greater your duty to leave something worthy behind. History is filled with men who left destruction as their legacy, tyrants, despots, warmongers. They are remembered but not honored. True legacy is not about being remembered. It is about being remembered for the right reasons. The test is not whether history speaks your name, but how it speaks it. Modern society chases relevance in the moment, but legacy asks a different question. Will you matter when the moment ends? Social approval fades. Trends vanish. Fashions change. But legacy is not bound by fashion. Legacy is stone carved by conviction, not sand shaped by waves of popularity. And legacy is not measured by scale alone. It is not only presidents and inventors and industrialists who leave legacies. Teachers leave legacies in the minds they sharpen. Parents leave legacies in the children they raise. Artists leave legacies in the emotions they awaken. Entrepreneurs leave legacies in the opportunities they create. The scale varies, but the principle remains. A life lived with purpose leaves a trail that others can follow. Legacy is also humility. It demands that you think beyond yourself. What you build is not only for your satisfaction. It is for those who come after. Cathedral builders in the Middle Ages often spent their entire lives working on structures they would never live to see finished. They laid stones faithfully, knowing their grandchildren would see the towers rise. That is legacy. Planting trees under whose shade you will never sit. Building roads you may never walk. Writing words you may never hear repeated. That is greatness. And legacy is proof of alignment. If your life is scattered, so will be your legacy. If your purpose is shallow, so will be your inheritance. But if your life is aligned with vision, with belief, with discipline, with sacrifice, with courage, with consistency, with patience, then your legacy will be solid. Because legacy is not built at the end. It is built every day. The question is not whether you will leave a legacy. You will. The question is, what kind? Everyone leaves something. Some leave ashes, regret, and brokenness. Others leave inspiration, structures, and dreams. The choice is made not in death, but in life. Every decision, every action, every sacrifice builds toward the legacy that will stand when you are gone. Legacy is the 19th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the ultimate scoreboard of existence. Success ends with you. Legacy begins after you. Success is what you achieve. Legacy is what you bequeath. Success feeds you. Legacy feeds generations. Success is applause today. Legacy is respect forever. And when your final day arrives, when your voice fades and your body rests, you will not carry your wealth, your comfort, your titles with you. You will carry only the satisfaction of knowing you built something that outlived you. And the world will not ask what you earned. It will ask what you left. Legacy is immortality earned through sacrifice. And the greatest tragedy is not to die. It is to die without leaving one. Chapter 20, Destiny. Destiny. The word itself carries weight, a gravity that pulls on the soul. It is the invisible current beneath your life, the story written in the fabric of time that whispers. There is something more, something larger than survival, something greater than comfort. Destiny is not fate handed to you. It is not luck, not lottery, not chance. Destiny is forged. It is built. It is chosen. It is demanded. Destiny is the marriage of vision and action, of sacrifice and resilience, of patience and courage, of consistency and leadership, all culminating in a life that refuses to be ordinary. Every man and woman who ever carved their names into the pillars of history stood before this same choice, to drift or to rise. Most drift. They are born, they live, they consume, they die, and time erases them as easily as waves erase footprints in sand. But a few, the rare few, refuse to drift. They rise. They seize their destiny not as a gift, but as a conquest. They bend their lives into instruments of purpose. And because of this, they do not vanish when their breath ends. They remain. They endure. Destiny is the summit toward which every rule of greatness points. Belief fuels it. Clarity shapes it. Vision expands it. Purpose anchors it. Discipline sustains it. Action ignites it. Gratitude refines it. Adaptability adjusts it. Resilience protects it. Learning strengthens it. Focus sharpens it. Sacrifice invests in it. Consistency compounds it. Patience matures it. Courage defends it. Leadership multiplies it. Legacy records it. And all of them together form destiny, the fulfillment of what your life was meant to mean. But destiny is not passive. It is not waiting in silence to be discovered like a stone in the forest. Destiny is crafted. It is summoned. It is the result of choices made in the crucible of fear, in the furnace of failure, in the silence of discipline. The Wright brothers did not stumble into destiny by accident. They stepped into it by risking their lives on the wings of wood and canvas. Edison did not drift into destiny. He pulled it into existence through thousands of failures. Lincoln did not inherit destiny. He endured ridicule, tragedy, and war to forge it. Ford, Carnegie, Disney, none of them were passengers on the river of time. They were rowers, builders, conquerors. Destiny demands ownership. You cannot blame others and still claim destiny. You cannot make excuses and still fulfill it. Destiny belongs to those who point at themselves, not the world, and declare, "It is on me. It always has been. It always will be." Destiny is costly. The price is high. It demands more than talent. It demands more than desire. It demands everything. Your comfort, your safety, your illusions, sometimes even your peace. Lincoln paid with his life. Martin Luther King Jr. paid with his life. Joan of Arc paid with her life. Greatness and destiny often demand blood. But the paradox is this: though they died, they do not die. Their names live. Their words live. Their vision lives. That is the essence of destiny, mortality defeated by meaning. But destiny is not only for those written in history books. It is for every human being willing to live with purpose so strong it carves eternity into time. Parents shape destinies when they raise children in truth and courage. Teachers shape destinies when they awaken minds. Artists shape destinies when they reveal unseen worlds. Entrepreneurs shape destinies when they create opportunity. Every life has a destiny, but not every life fulfills it. Because fulfilling destiny requires the courage to choose it daily, to sacrifice for it, to endure for it, to bleed for it. Destiny is also alignment. When your gifts, your vision, your discipline, and your purpose align, destiny activates. It is like striking flint and steel. When all the elements meet, the spark becomes flame. Too many people never align. Their gifts remain unused, their vision blurred, their discipline weak, their purpose ignored. Destiny waits, but they never claim it. They live small, safe, forgettable. And history has no room for the forgettable. But when a life aligns, when vision burns, when sacrifice flows, when patience endures, when courage refuses to bow, then destiny roars. Then a single life reshapes millions. Then the world itself bends. That is why people still walk through the halls of Gettysburg and feel Lincoln. That is why people still light candles with Edison's fire. That is why people still ride in Ford's vision, still study in Carnegie's libraries, still laugh and dream in Disney's worlds. That is destiny fulfilled, one life magnifying across centuries. Destiny is also defiance. To fulfill it, you must resist conformity, resist mediocrity, resist the temptation to play small. The world will tell you to be reasonable, to settle, to stay safe. But no destiny was ever fulfilled by playing safe. Playing safe builds comfort. Playing bold builds destiny. Playing safe gives you years. Playing bold gives you eternity. And destiny is urgency. Time is not endless. Every day wasted is a piece of your destiny surrendered. Every excuse steals from the future. Every hesitation kills momentum. Destiny waits for no one. It demands that you rise now, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a lie. Tomorrow is a thief. Today is the only battlefield. If you want destiny, you must seize it here, now, with whatever you have, wherever you are. Destiny is the 20th rule of becoming the best at anything because it is the summation of all rules, the final test, the last horizon. It asks, will you leave this world as you found it, or will you leave it altered by your existence? Will your name be a whisper that fades, or a fire that spreads? Will your breath vanish with your body, or will it breathe through generations? And so the question comes to you, the same question that came to Edison in his workshop, to Lincoln in the White House, to Disney in his studio, to Ford in his factory, to Carnegie in his office, to every human who stood at the edge of greatness. What will you do with your life? Will you drift? Or will you rise? Because destiny does not belong to the gifted. It does not belong to the lucky. It does not belong to the chosen. It belongs to the bold, to those who dare, to those who endure, to those who bleed, to those who sacrifice, to those who lead, to those who focus, to those who believe, to those who build, to those who refuse to stop. Destiny belongs to the ones who look fear in the eye and say, I am not here to survive. I am here to shape eternity. And when the last page of your story is written, when your eyes close and your breath fades, the question will not be, how long did you live? The question will be, what did you leave? And if you have chosen destiny, if you have forged it with blood and belief, then your answer will echo through the centuries. Not silence, but immortality.